Hi everyone, Matthew with Dr. G in Technology, and today we're going to go over what I do as a Chief Data Officer. You can kind of see a very busy screen, and we'll kind of unleash, what someone does as a CDO and kind of how to get there. So before we get too deep, certainly leave your comments below. Tell us what you want to hear more of. That way we can produce the content that helps you throughout your IT journey. Also hit the like button, subscribe button, and bell buttons. That way you can be alerted to any kind of new content that we produce and or update for you. And then lastly, up in the upper right corner of your screen, download the freebie that we have, and that's how much can I make working in IT. It'll show you the various ranges of what to expect in terms of salary, just depending on where you are in the very beginning stages, middle stages, or advanced stages of your career. So off we go in terms of Chief Data Officer world, right? So first up, what are some example projects I've worked on in the CDO world? Well, there's a mixture of them, and I've utilized a lot of different vendors, softwares. This is by no means an endless list. This is just some ones that pop up at the surface. But data analytics is a strong part of my world as a chief data officer, and that means using analytical tools such as Tableau. Certainly, plenty others out there. This is just one example. They're very strong. Also, from time to time, I need to lean on um, research as well as figure out what are other companies doing out there and other people who hold my position. So for something like that in data maturity, I'll go to someone like Gartner. Gartner is a vendor who produces research as well as is in the know of what's happening in other organizations, and they can kind of help steer you as a chief data officer into the various areas you might need to go based on where people in your industry are also going. And so, over the life cycle of data, data becomes dirty, it becomes old. We need to update data. This is where data maturity comes in, and there's a whole arm on maturity. So a lot of my time is spent on that as well in projects I've worked on. Data lakes and repositories, right? This is where data is held, essentially huge, large databases, right? Data warehouses, data marts, so a lot of projects I've worked on involve everything from the largest of data lakes in the federal world to the smaller data marts, for a company who's trying to slice and dice their data. And so I've worked with various organizations in this space, especially because this is really where the rubber meets the road and all the hardware and software vendors come to play. And so dealing with a company like or working with a company like Amazon with their AWS environment is something I've been recently exposed to in the past couple of years. And I am Amazon certified cloud practitioner, which has really helped me kind of just understand the world of AWS. And then lastly, another type of project I worked on is data migration, right? And that is really coming to data warehouses where you're taking old data from, legacy databases, what they're called, and you're trying to get them up to speed into maybe newer data sources, get the data cleansed, etc. Right? And so projects like that I've worked with Oracle's systems, amongst others as well. But these are just example projects that you might work on as a chief data officer and what to expect, right? So, where to next is what does my day look like? Well, I spend about 50% of my time communicating upward and downward, right? Upward, I'm communicating kind of ideas, strategy, as well as they're communicating down to me what they expect, what they see, what the requirements are regarding what they want to see under their data. I then take that, strategize, do some planning, and then start communicating downward or to my equals, that being to perhaps other data analysts to figure out how do we resolve their problems, how do we figure out how to get to the data, how do we analyze the data, what kind of metrics do we need, what kind of analysis do we need, right? And this is where, again, another area where the rubber meets the road in terms of taking requirements from a user and then helping turn it into something usable for that user, right? 40% of my time, I'd say, is strategy, planning, metrics, doing dashboards, really taking on what the company wants to do from a data perspective. Sometimes the CDO reports straight to the CEO. Sometimes they may report to something like someone like a CIO or a CTO, right? It really just depends on the structure of the organization and just how they see the CDO role, right? So strategy and planning and metrics can happen at various levels, just depending on where you fit in the organization. But for sure, as the lead individual of data, you are certainly trying to map out and plan out, let's just say, the next 3 years of where you're going to go with your data planning, and based upon what needs the organization might have based on needing new hardware, new software, what resource skills people do we need, what kind of analytical skills are we going to need based on where we see the company going, let's just say 3 years from now. And the last 10%, training, mentorship, just kind of keeping up with the world, kind of like you heard me talk about earlier, and mentorship is really not just me mentoring others, but me getting mentored on what's happening out with my peers, other CDOs, conferences, right, symposiums, if I can participate in, not necessarily where I'm a speaker all the time, but where I'm really listening to figure out, how to do my job better, as well as how to represent the organization better. So those are just some examples of how I spend my day as a CDO, and yours may differ because the world of data really is moving very fast. I've seen it grow tremendously. Data is ironically where I got my start in my career. My first job was in data warehousing. 25 plus years later, I'm right back into it. Always dealt with data here and there, but probably not as hard as I am right now as a CDO. So you just never know where your career will take you and what skills you'll need. So next up, what are some example CDO tasks? Well, the things I might do now, more specifically, might be like planning and updating with data analysts. So I might meet with data analysts weekly or every other week, just depends, to figure out where we are, where are some of the roadblocks, what do they need help with to do their job better, right? To kind of projectize, for example, all the data sources that say we need to migrate into something like a data lake. That might be an example of a task that I might work on, and it might be like a 3 year project plan, for example, that we're working on. I'm also looking to lead data analytics and working groups, or maybe they're called DAWGs, if you will. And this is where I, as a CDO, and my team can communicate and talk with all the other areas to be sure that they have the right people in place for their data needs, right? So it's not just me hiring data analysts, but they are also should be involved in hiring their own data analysts for the various units and departments with the different skill sets they need. And so that could be, certainly people looking at data quality, people who have analytical skills, as well as ensuring they're setting the right processes in place for their own departments and units. And all that starts with something like data analytics and working group, where we can come together and agree on what those processes should be so that everyone's doing everything uniformly. Last thing is implementing perhaps a data maturity model, right? Data matures over time, and we have to figure out, when to sunset some of it, when to save some of it off in a data repository that may no longer be needed, as well as how to create a scorecard, for example, of how an organization is doing with all of their data habits. Let's just put it that way, right? So data maturity is something that you can put in place, and a model that helps organizations figure out where they are on a spectrum, let's just say from 1 to 5, in terms of, are they doing processes, are they from the ground up, are they just learning how to do them? If so, maybe they're a 1 to all the way where they're fully automated. They have quality measures in place, they have people in place, etc. And so they may be at a 5, let's say, on the data maturity model. So those are just some example specific tasks that I might be working on as a CDO, right? And there are plenty others that come into play, but these are just some high level ones to give you an idea of the world of a CDO. So what are some example tools where you've heard me rattle off some of them? Here's a list of just some that pop into my mind, some I've worked with. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but just gives you an idea of the types of tools and companies and vendors you may be working with, right? It really just depends. There are so many, up and coming great companies who are doing great things with data analytics, tools, intelligence, business intelligence, etc. I remember one of the first ones I worked with was MicroStrategy. To this day, I still follow them. I still dabble in with their tools, and that's just another example. So certainly no shortage of tools. It just kind of comes down to what environment does your company have? What do they want? For example, something like AWS, or maybe something on the cloud with Oracle. And then from there, a lot of the other tools will fall into place regarding what's compatible, what the budget is, and what the organization actually wants out of these tools, right? We don't just invest in tools to say we have them. We invest in the right tools that actually produce the results we need based on the data that we're trying to get out and the decisions we're trying to make, right? So that's one of the biggest lessons learned in all things data. So that's my world as a CDO. You can see it can get pretty complex. And hopefully, this has been kind of a good refresher for you, if not an introduction for you regarding all things data. And hopefully, it's helped you. If so, give us a like and be sure to click up there on the freebie again and download How Much Can I Make Working in IT. So, we will see you on the next video.
As a reminder, click the like button, leave us your comments, let us know what you'd like to hear more of. Also, click the subscribe button and the bell button so that you're immediately alerted anytime a new video is published. Be sure to join our IT Village, which is the link to communicate with others within our YouTube channel over on our platform so that you can get answers to your questions. And lastly, in the upper right corner of our YouTube channel, click the free download of How Much Can I Make in IT?